talking a little bit today about sleep consultants, which I am one of. But why do some children's sleep consultants say they don't use cry it out when in fact they use cry it out? It's very confusing and a little bit deceiving, and I'm going to share the reasons why and what you need to be looking out for if you are looking for some sleep advice from a children's sleep consultant. So why do children's sleep consultants say that they are gentle and they don't use cry it out when actually they use cry it out? Well, there's a way that they get around this, because most sleep consultants will say that cry it out is when you go through a bedtime routine and you lay your child down and you just leave them there until they fall asleep, however long that is. That could be 3 minutes, that could be 3 hours, that could be 8 hours, and that is cry it out. And yeah, that most certainly is. I don't know anybody who does that at all. It's incredibly harsh and pretty awful, to be honest. And so the techniques that sleep consultants will say that it's not cried out because they're not doing that. You're going to go through your bedtime routine, you're going to lay your child down and you're going to leave the room, regardless of whether they're crying or not. And then you set the time when you're going to come back in. And then generally this time increases, and then you come back in, you don't pick up your child, you soothe them a little bit just to let them know that you're still around. And then you leave again, regardless of whether they're crying or they cried the entire time or not. And then that time that you were out of the room increases, and then you come back in and you do the same thing, and then you leave and they're crying. So it's different, yeah, because you're coming in every so often to check on your child and to, just check on them and just let them know that you're still there, but you're not picking them up in any way, you're not soothing them in any way, and you're just ignoring them when they're crying, which is what that initial cry it out, leaving them until they've fallen asleep, is doing. You're ignoring them when they're crying. Now, there are totally different types of cries. As you well know, you're a parent, there's different types of cries. There's that kind of fussy, whiny cry. There's more of a mad cry, and then there's more of an urgent cry. And when you're doing either of these techniques, you're ignoring a cry. And if your child is asking for help, you're ignoring them for however long it is until you go and do your next check-in. And honestly, that's cry it out. You're ignoring your child when they're crying. You are not responding to them and you are not helping them when they're crying. And that is cry it out. So that is how sleep consultants get away with saying they're not using cry it out, because you're not going to leave your child. Why would you work with a sleep consultant who's just going to tell you to go through a routine, lay your child down, and just ignore them until they've fallen asleep? I mean, that's, just like the shittiest advice ever, to be honest. And not really a fan of the time checks either. You're ignoring your child when they're asking for help, and this is just not nice. It is not a nice thing. Yeah, it works for a lot of children. It works for a lot of families. But it's not nice. Ignoring your child when they're asking for help, whether they're 3 months old, 3 years old, 13 years old, is not nice. Help them if your child is asking for help. Go to them and help them however you need to help them. There's totally is ways that you can encourage better sleep. There are ways that you can sleep train even without having to do this, without having to ignore your child when they are asking for help and they're panicking and they're not going to be able to sleep because they're panicking. It's just not, if it's not nice for you as an adult and you understand the reasons that they need to be sleeping, imagine what that's like for your child, where they don't understand. You are just, all they know is they're asking for help and you are not coming for them. Don't do cry it out. Don't do veiled cry it out. You just don't do it. Please just don't do it. There's so many other ways that you can get better sleep without having to ignore your child.